Hi everybody, I'm Jane from the Table for Two show. Some of you know me from that or our Advent series. If you're one of our actual viewers who watch either the old Table for Two show with our gaming and or our Advent series, I thank you for taking a moment to look at this video. I wanted to say a couple of disclaimers. Number one, I am not a legal professional. I am by no means a professional in any realm of this. But I thought it would be important to share this with the world, or whoever watches it, actually. This is like the fourth take I'm doing on this video because I keep crying every time I do it. So hopefully this time I get through it. If you're new to the channel and you've never watched our shows, don't worry, you don't have to. This is more of a PSA, public service announcement that I thought I should record based on my mom's suggestion. So hello, Mom, and thank you for the suggestion. I think it was a great idea. So the title of this video is Somebody Has Passed Away. What do I do now? Question mark. This is by no means a self-help guide or anything like that. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but I want to share my experience with you. So if you're going through this, maybe this will help you. If you are not going through this, but in the future may have to deal with it, maybe this will help you. If none of the above, just turn off the video and don't watch this. So also a quick trigger warning. This is going to talk about death. So if you don't want to talk about death, again, turn off this video. So I think I got all my disclaimers out of the way. All right, so here is my story. Some of you know this who watch our show. My father passed away in 2020 on December 8th. So it's been a little over 2 years now since he's gone. I think a lot of you know if you watched my Advent series from last year, I talked about how wonderful he was and I did a little tribute to him. I could talk about how wonderful he is all day on this video, but I'm not going to do that. He gave me many gifts in my life, right? Many gifts when it comes to knowledge and advice and just good living. And he just was a great inspiration to me, but I never knew it until now, if that makes sense. However, the biggest gift he ever gave me was after he passed away. For years, even I was like, 16, 17 years old, my dad used to always say, in the top drawer of my desk, there is an envelope and it tells you everything you need to do in case I die. And I'd be like, Dad, I don't want to hear about death. Let's not talk about that, right? I would shoo him away or tell him, just leave me alone. If it happens, I'll worry about it then. All those things people say. All the way up until he moved to Illinois. We started to help him out with some things. And, even at 50 something years old myself, I was like, Dad, it's still in the same top drawer, the list. I call it the list. And I never looked at the list while he was alive because I was like, I don't want to look at that. Who wants to talk about that? Nobody. But I'm glad and so ever grateful that he made that list for me. So I want to share the list with you. My mom suggested this because after my dad passed away and I used the list and many, months or a year later or so, I talked to my mom about it and I said, look what Dad did. And she also said, that's a great idea. So I sent her a copy of, not his list, but I sent her a copy of what he used, basically the outline of his list. Oh, and she filled it out within like a week. So I'm prepared for her. God bless, something happened. So my husband and I have also done the same for each other. We made the list for each other. And then we also know that if one of us are not around, there's another person in our family that the list will go to, right? So that way, nobody is burdened in a lot of ways, right? So what is this list, you might ask? What is this list she's talking about? I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just giving you some free information based on my experience. You can take it or leave it, do what you want with it. But I want to just give you some things to think about. This should not be a long video, but the list is 1 page. So either you're watching this video thinking, if my parents pass away, what do I do? Or my sister or my brother or a sibling or whoever it may be in your life that you might have to be responsible for. Or you might be the parent or the wife or the husband. If I pass away, who's going to do all these things for me or, for my estate or whatever you want to call it. You don't have to have an estate. You can have a little tiny apartment. It doesn't matter, right? Estate's just basically whatever's left over after you're gone. And I know some people were like, I'll be dead. I don't care, right? I'll be dead. I don't care. I've heard people say that before. That's terrible, right? Care about your family, care about your siblings, care about your mother, your dad, whoever it may be, care about them. Because when my dad passed away, the first thing I had to deal with was grief, right? Grief. Oh my God, my dad's gone, right? She's about to cry. Nope, not gonna cry. So I have all that I'm dealing with, right? I'm grieving, I'm upset, he's gone. But then, oh my God, I have so much responsibility. So after he passed away at the hospital, did what we had to do. Hospital had to bring him to the funeral home, all those things. You know, I took some breaths and I said, well, I don't know what to do. So I went in his top drawer. And I got the list. And thank you so much for that list, Daddy. Thank you so much. Okay. I gotta compose myself now because I don't want to read this list again for the third time or fourth time I'm recording this with all tears going down my face. Okay. So here's some things to think about, folks. If you're the person preparing for somebody else to die, or if you are the person who might die someday and you want to prepare your friends or your family or kids, especially if I'm an only child, by the way. This is huge to me. I had nobody to share this responsibility with. Anyway, so here's some things to think about. This is my list, my dad's list. Number 1, is there a will? Is there a will? Is there an executor of the will? Are you responsible? Are you the executor of the will? Or if you're making your will, who's going to be the executor? Executor basically means who's going to be responsible for doing all the things, right? All the things that you have to do when somebody passes away. And if that person's not around, is there a secondary person, right? So there's, hopefully everybody's smart enough to get a will. Even if you have nothing. If you have nothing, you can have just a couch and a table. Where does it go? The government? You don't want to give it to the government. You know, even if somebody gives it away for charity, I don't care. But the point is, you should have a will, right? Have a will. But if you are a parent, like my dad did this for me, he put everything in trust for me. There is a difference. Talk to your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. I'm going to say that one more time. But a trust, there's no probate. There's no, you have to go to the court to get the things you need to get. It just transfers to you. Right, so my dad passed away on December 8th. I then owned his home. I owned his belongings. I owned his bank account, whatever it is. I had to do what I had to do. I didn't have to worry about, oh, I got to go to the courts now. And I was in trust for me. And there was no if, and, or but about that. So you get what's called a trust for your child, or if you're doing it for your husband or what, you know, whatever it means. Oh, husband and wife don't need a trust. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. Husband, again, I'm not a lawyer. Husband and wife just, you know, if I give it all to Phil or Phil gives it all to me, that's in the will, right? But if there's an estate type thing, like you had to give it to your daughter, you know, put it in trust. Right? Then they don't have to go through the struggle of getting all that stuff put together. Even when your parents are alive, or if you're a parent, if you're alive, obviously if you're alive, you're watching this, right? Who's the power of attorney for you? If you get to a point where you can't do things for yourself anymore, who's going to do them for you? I didn't have to get to that point with my dad, but I was power of attorney of my dad's estate, right? So if I needed to pay his bills or do anything like that, I could do it, right? And there's also what's called the healthcare power of attorney, where if he had to have something done and he wasn't in his right mind, which he never got to that point, thank God, I would be able to say, yes, do this, or don't do that procedure, or all those types of things, right? So there's the power of attorney for money matters. And then there's the healthcare power of attorney for, God bless it, they're not in the right mind, or if you're not in your right mind and you want your children or my husband or whoever to make that decision for me, you have to have something like that, right? Who's making those decisions? Is there any life insurance in place? Life insurance is freaking expensive. So it's a good thing to have, because that usually will cover hopefully the cost of the funeral and things like this. But if that person doesn't have a life insurance, well, then how is that stuff going to be paid for, right? Do they have enough money to do that, or do you have to put it out of your own pocket, right? So just think about things like that. You know, if you don't have life insurance, that's fine. My dad did not have life insurance, just so you know, but he had money set aside for those things. So I knew where exactly to get the money and what to do with it. Then you have to look at the assets, right? So like my dad had a house, right? There was no mortgage, thank God. But if there is a mortgage, you know, that's got to get paid, right? You know, or sell the home and then pay off the mortgage. Right? You have to just know all these things. You have to be aware. Is there an asset to sell? A car, right? Things like this. Are you responsible for doing all those things? Also, by the way, it's also time out of your day, time out of your world to do all these things. Where's the title to the home? Where's the title to the car? Right? Where are the titles to these things? Because you can't sell it without them, right? My dad had everything in a security box, what they call a bank security box. So I knew where all that stuff was. It was also on the list. You know, all the titles were in the, so I knew where to go and get it. Of course, my name was on the security box as well, so I could get right into it and get what I needed. Now, if I'm gonna say it because I'm taking it from a parent's perspective, being a child. If your parents have a home, and you're not going to keep it, right? Which you keep, right? But you have to get it ready for sale, like I had to do with my dad, right? Real estate this year, in 2020, I should say, or 2021, was really good times. You could sell really quickly, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So you have to be prepared to sell that house, right? And how long it might take. Now, guess what? While you're waiting to sell the house, you might have to clean out the house. There's time and money and effort there. You might have to divvy out things. You might have to sell things. You might have to give it to charity, whatever you want to do with it, but you have to do something with the stuff, right? But then while that stuff's being happening, you're cleaning out the house, you're doing what you have to do, you're getting it ready for sale. And then even while it's on the market for sale, guess what? Somebody has to pay for the gas, the electric, the insurance on the house. If there's, like we have here in our town, we have a garbage where they charge you, what's called a village fee every 2 months. Is there insurance? I said insurance, I think already, but the point is, who's paying for all that, right? You have to keep the lights on while they're showing it for the real estate. You have to keep the heat on or whatever it happens to be. So the question to let's say to your parents is, as my dad said, here are the people I pay for these items every month. And those have to be paid until you sell the house, right? So, and if your dad or mom doesn't have any money, or that leaving you any money, then guess who's got to pay for that if you're selling that house? Now you get it back, right? Because you're going to sell the home, and maybe there's a mortgage, and there's a little bit of a kickback back to you, and maybe that pays for some of these things you're doing, and that's great. But in the beginning, you have to pay for these things. You have to, whether your credit card, I don't know, whatever you have to do to get these things done. Right, so make sure you know who are the bills. What are the bills that are being paid? Is there a credit card sitting out there? Anyway, that's another story. We'll get to that yet. Cars, obviously, is there a loan? Same concept as the house. Is there a title? If not, who's the insurance carrier on the car? Right, if you're not going to drive the car, you probably could drop the insurance and just sell it. But if you are going to drive that car somewhere or bring it somewhere, make sure you have that insurance paid. Right, that's something else you'd have to pay. Then you have to look at things like cable TV, subscriptions, Netflix, Hulu, whatever things they might have had, right? Where's that list? My dad had a list of here's all the things I pay for on a monthly basis or annual basis that are subscriptions. I think of my own self, Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus. Yes, when the person passes away, there's no more responsibility, to pay for that anymore, but you have to let them know to cancel. You have to cancel those things. Otherwise, they keep charging the credit card that was originally on, and you got to pay that credit card, hopefully with the money from your family's estate. But that's an important thing. Do I have services that have to be turned off? Facebook, folks, if you're on Facebook, make sure somebody is your, I forget what they call it on Facebook right now, but they can go into your account and shut it down if you want it shut down. Some people make memorials out of Facebook pages, but I shut my dad's down right away, right? I was like, shut it down. Nobody needs to be posting on there, seeing his, So that's up to your choice, of course, but subscriptions, magazines, the mail, have the person's mail, if you're responsible again, have that person's mail forwarded to your house immediately. Go to the post office, get one of those, forward mail forms, and start to see for a whole year what mail comes in, because you may realize, oh, there's a subscription here I have to cancel, or here's a bill that I didn't know was available that has to be, paid or canceled, right? So all those little things. So membership, subscriptions, online programs. Does your parent have a storage facility? My dad did not. He had the basement, so that was fair. But if you have to go to a storage facility and clean that out too, right? It's a lot of work. Can you get in there? Do you even know where it is? Things like this. And the big topics, money, right? Not every parent has money, and you don't have to worry about these things. But do they have banks, checking, savings, CDs, 401ks, savings accounts, bonds? I said savings already. Are they in different banks? Now, you don't necessarily need to know all the bank account numbers and all that kind of crap, but are you the beneficiary of those accounts? If you're the person responsible for doing all this, or do you have to, divvy it out to somebody else because it's in their will? But how do you divvy it out unless you have, a way to get into that bank account and do that? How do you pay those bills out of that bank account unless you have availability to do that? Obviously, if you're made the beneficiary, well, then yes, you can make out those bills, right? My dad, I was co-signer on all of his accounts, so that worked out for me in case something happened, right? But as soon as he passed away, I knew where to go to get the money to do, God bless the funeral and all those kind of crazy things. So, are you a co-signer? Maybe you should be if you're not. Is there any, here's a good one. Is there any money in the house? Now, my dad was 84 years old when he passed away. He was born in 1936. My mom was born in 1944. My dad was born in 1936. So when my husband and I, after he passed, and, weeks, maybe months later, after I can calm down and all those good things, I started to clean his house, go through the house, do all those things I mentioned. And as we were opening dresser drawers, and in the basement there was another little chest of drawers, there was money. in all of these drawers. Oh my God, $15 here, $25. There's money all over the damn house. So don't just sell the furniture without looking through it. I'm not trying to be funny, but especially if your parents were my age, from the 30s and 40s, there could be money in a can in a cabinet. Or I had a friend who told me she found money in a can in the cleaning supplies. It was like a borax can. And when she popped the lid because it felt so light, it was all cash. So don't just throw things away without going through books and da-da-da-da. I'm not joking. If you have parents from that era, you might find things you don't even know about. Of course, credit cards, right? Is there a balance on that credit card? Does it have to be paid and, of course, canceled, right? That's important to think about. Okay, here's the biggest thing my dad did for me. I had a Social Security number already because I did a lot of his medical stuff, but I had to call Social Security. I had to cancel his Social Security from coming in every month. He also had a pension from the company he worked for. He gave me the number of the pension office on that list. So I knew to call the number, explain that he had passed away, and they would stop depositing the money into his account. Because if they deposit it, and it's after the day the person passed away, guess who's got to return that money? You. So get that thing shut as soon as you can. If you're an older parent, Medicare needs to be canceled. Any supplemental policies they have to be canceled. And one thing my dad taught me with supplemental insurance is that if he paid for the full year, which he used to do, and he dies in that full year, somewhere in between that full year, there's a refund coming towards you. He always told me that every time. If I die, make sure that the supplemental insurance, I get that refund. I get that refund. He used to say that to me. Now, okay, Daddy, I'll make sure you get it, right? So I called the place, and they made sure the refund was put in my name as the estate of. It was given to me, obviously, and that actually paid for some of the other bills. But the point is, if you didn't know that right now, right, would you have done it? Would you know to even call and ask for that refund? You should probably contact all the person's doctors. My dad had a list of his doctors. Of course, I was taking him to all those doctors for the last 2 years, but, let them know he has passed away, shut down his account, things like that. And then the hardest part, right? Funerals, cremation, burial, right? All those things. Again, I'm not the expert, so please don't take this like I'm the expert. I'm just giving you some advice of what I had to deal with. Obviously there's this is going to sound terrible. You get the bill from, if you have an ambulance situation like I did, you get the bill from the ambulance. You get the bill from the deductible for the hospital. And then they have to transport him to the funeral parlor. And then there's the funeral parlor. And then there's where is he going to be buried? Thank God my dad bought a plot. I didn't have to deal with that. He had a plot. I knew where it was. I knew who to call. He even told me the funeral home he wanted to use. He didn't set it up. I had to pay for it out of his money, but I knew who to call. His headstone, all those things you got to do. Now, if you're cremated, it's a little bit different. I didn't have to deal with that, but it's probably a little less expensive. But let me give you a hint. Do you know how much a funeral costs? My dad, just the normal stuff, cost $25,000. I am not joking with you. $25,000, including all the little things you do, right? The wake, the services, the headstone, there's a fee for this guy and that guy, and oh my gosh. So if your parents don't have any money in the bank or don't have a life insurance policy, you're not going to just let them sit in the morgue. You have to do it. You have to do it. If you don't have any money yourself, you got to take a loan, right? So, or be prepared. Anyway, just pointing out this is a very expensive piece of the puzzle there. If you have more sisters and brothers, you might be able to share that expense. Myself, right? It's all me. Thank God Dad had some money in the bank. It worked out. But if I didn't know all that, or if I found out after he died that he had nothing, yeah. So as a parent, look, I don't have any children, right? So I can't really talk to that. But looking at my dad, looking at me, he's saying, I don't want you to have to deal with any of this. Here's the list, right? Here's the list. Be prepared. Know what's going to happen. Who else do you have to notify? Friends? Did that person have friends in their life that you don't know about? Maybe they had an address book, like my dad had, a physical address book, where I went through it. I called all the people that was in the address book, even if I didn't know them, let them know he had passed away. And then other costs, you just have to be prepared for that, right? Here's the one thing people don't realize, especially if you're in a situation like I was, an only child handling your father's situation, right? There was bills to be paid, but then there's other bills like, oh, I have to have moving people move the stuff out of the house that I'm getting rid of. I can't lift a big bookshelf by myself. Even Phil and I can't lift a big bookshelf by ourselves together. So we had to hire people to help us move stuff out, sell things to have people come get it. But there's expense to all of that, right? There's expense to all of that. And then most likely before the home is ready to go, you gotta clean it, or you hire somebody like I got a maid to go in there and just clean out the whole thing, make sure it's clean before I had put it up for sale. You might have to fix some things, right? So all of this is, I mean, people don't think about this stuff, right? So, or maybe you do. If you do, you shouldn't be watching this video. You're cool. But I want people who don't think about this stuff to take a moment and think about it. If you are the person preparing for somebody to do yours, think about all these things I just mentioned, and can somebody handle that for you or when you're gone, right? If you're the person who has an elderly parent, maybe talk to them about this. You know, like I said, after my dad went away and I sat for a while and I did all these things, and like a year later, I talked to my mom and I'm like, you know my mom has a life insurance policy. She's told me that. She sent me an email with all the information in case something happens to me, and that's fine. But what about the rest of this, right? So I sent her the list and I said, Mom, you may not have some of these things, you know, fair enough. You may not. You may think of something else by reading this list and knowing, you know, oh, what about this or that? I should also write that down, right? Let her know this or that. It's something that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about dying. They don't want to think about dying. And they don't want to think about their father or mother dying. It's not a good topic. It sucks, right? But be kind to the others, right? So in my husband's situation, we made the same list. Obviously, some of the things we do are joint, but some of the things we do are separate. You know, does he know everything I have, you know, when it comes to memberships and whatever it may be? So we have this list for each other, one for me, one for him. So if one of each other are gone, we grab the list and we know what we have to do about that person's estate. And then if something happens, then have that second person in mind, right? So like if my husband passes away before me, I then give that list to a cousin of mine. I'm not saying who or what. I'm not doing personal business here, but I will say that that cousin will then have the list. She is already the executor of my will, but she'll have the list, right? If Phil was here, she doesn't have to worry about all that stuff, right? Because Phil will take care of it. And vice versa. Phil, if I'm not here, he would give it to one of his cousins because we are both only children. But the idea is that don't just make them shocked, like, oh my gosh, right? They walk into your home and go, oh, I didn't know she had all these things, or I didn't know she had such. What do I do? I'm lost. Make the list. Help your family. Let them know. So that way when they're grieving for you, because that's the hardest part right there, and then they realize, oh my gosh, now what? Right? So help them out. Give them a list. Hope this helps anybody out there who may be watching it. You know, again, I thank my dad every single day that he did that for me, because he made that transition so easy. It sucked, but it was the easiest transition ever. And we did the same thing with my godmother, who was his sister. When she passed away, she had her list for him, and I helped him with that. But the idea is we had the list. So think about it, guys. And I'm not an expert, like I said. If you have any questions, you can ask below. I'll give you, you know, what happened to me. But again, I would highly recommend calling a lawyer, getting that set up, talk to your lawyer, talk to your friends or family, and just have one open conversation. I think it'll help everybody in the end. All right, God bless everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Sorry for this different video on our channel, but my mom said it's probably a good idea to share this information, so I thought, why the heck not? Talk to y'all later. Bye. I forgot 2 things, so I want to share this really quickly at the end. One very important thing: when somebody passes away and you're responsible for them, don't forget the death certificates. It sounds awful, I know, but usually your county or your state provides a death certificate a couple of weeks after the person passes away. Ask for multiple copies. Sometimes the bank needs a copy. Sometimes the funeral home needs a copy. Oh, my dad was also in the Army. I had to notify the Army that he's passed away and show them a copy of his, you know, so, I mean, you might need multiple versions or copies of that death certificate. Don't just get one, because a lot of them want the actual, what they call the real one. It's sealed with like a seal on it. Some people will take a copy, some people won't. So get a couple of copies of the original. Ask for a bunch of originals, and they'll charge you for that, of course, as well. But it is worth grabbing back maybe 10 copies just to be safe, or maybe 5 or 10 copies based on what your family has. But the other thing I forgot is personal identification. That person's wallet, their license, their identification card if they're not licensed any longer, their passport, right? All those things, make sure they're destroyed, shredded, whatever you got to do to them, so nobody else gets a hold of those. Maybe even cancel them out, right, if you can. You know, call or talk to the local. In our case, it's like a DMV type situation where you can actually show them the death certificate and have them cancel the card. My dad had a FOID card. He had to get that canceled, right? So think about IDs as well. Okay, now I'm done. Just something I forgot after now. When I watched the video, I said, okay, I forgot those things. Let me add them in the end. All right, guys. Again, sorry for the interesting, different video, but I thought, you know, who knows? Maybe this will help somebody out there. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.